Akilan and Kabi, welcome to Melbourne. It's so great to have you here.
Great to be here.
Great to be here, thanks.
Can you tell me a little bit about yourselves?
Sure. Akilan Karuna, head of North America and partner at Munro. I get the unique privilege and opportunity to represent Munro alongside Kabi here in Canada, in the Canadian marketplace. We get to work really closely with CI Global Asset Management as our distribution partner. So we work with them to cover a variety of distribution channels there, and I get to represent our portfolio management team and our broader business in front of our client base in Canada.
And Kabi, can you tell us about yourself?
Sure, yeah, Kabi Thaya, Institutional Sales Associate. It's exactly what AK was alluding to, where you're effectively the mouthpiece and boots on the ground for Munro in Canada, just trying to maintain our client base and find new avenues of growth.
AK, you mentioned you're head of North America and you were Munro's first Canadian employee. Can you tell me how that came about?
Sure, absolutely. It's a great question. So through my previous role at CI Institutional, I had the unique opportunity of being part of the team that was helping bring Munro partner strategies to Canada via the institutional channels there. So I met our founding partners and our portfolio managers in late 2018 when the business was being set up in Canada. So it gave me a unique opportunity to sort of meet the team before they were really entering into the region. And I think immediately for myself, what resonated the most was the investment philosophy and process. It was very unique and refreshing and very differentiated for the Canadian marketplace. So it really struck a chord. I was very enthused to work with the team, and I think that enthusiasm was really noticed by our founding partners. And I'd say fast forward about 18 months or so, the client base was starting to grow and they're trying to embark on that journey of building the business in Canada. So our CEO and founding partner, Ronnie, gave me a call in early 2020, I think specifically March 30th, 2020. That phone call ultimately did change my life, where he told me that the team was recruiting and they're looking for somebody, and he asked me to effectively to more or less join the business at that point. And it's been the best decision of my life, and it's an honor and a privilege to really support and represent our business in North America.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the relationship between CI and Munro Partners?
Absolutely. So we work with CI in Canada effectively as our distribution partner and as international sub-advisors. Myself and Kabi and the entire team here, we get to support CI's distribution channels as they market and sell our strategies across the region. So we work with them across institutional and retail distribution, and as well we have exposure to the CI managed platform. So across their multi-asset platform, we have sleeves that we manage for Munro via their growth equity bucket, and we get exposure across the platform there. It's been a fantastic relationship with CI. It's been great. They've been great partners, and we've tried to reciprocate that as well. And it's been a great sort of journey over the past 4 years, and we're looking forward to continuing embarking on that journey together.
So some people may not realise, but Munro manages 3 funds in Canada. Kabi, can you tell us a little bit about the funds and maybe the differences compared to Australia?
Absolutely. So we obviously have our long-short global growth equity strategy, our long-only global growth equity strategy, and now the climate strategy. It's great to have the alignment between the two countries in terms of managing all the strategies pari passu, different names, but effectively you're getting the same product, with the only difference being the domestic currency that you can purchase them in, and you're getting the same structural growth ideas across the board, which I think is phenomenal for clients.
And if I could just add into that, so what's really helped us coming into the Canadian side of the business is that we effectively have that 17-year track record of running these global long-short absolute return strategies, where Nick Griffin and the team have exposure to retail and high net worth investors here in Australia, effectively for 17 or 18 years doing that type of strategy, where in the Canadian marketplace, the regulations changed in late 2018, where effectively we get to bring our strategy and port it over, as Kabi mentioned, pari passu, and it's just been a beautiful journey since then.
Fantastic. And AK, the team in Canada is obviously growing since Kabi joined. Can you let us know how you make sure that the Munrovian culture is translated in Canada?
Yeah, and I think for myself, being able to have met many of the team in the early days in person as well, so our founders, Nick, Ronnie, John, it's been great to have met them earlier on, as well as several of our portfolio managers in the early days when we were setting up the business in Canada. So it's really easy to understand the identity of the firm, the culture. It's this entrepreneurial firm. It's a very hardworking, active, independent type of organization. So it's very easy to understand that and know what you're getting into while joining the business. So that was easy for myself personally on a standpoint when it came to recruiting and looking for our fellow rockstar associate here, Kabi. It was really an easy sort of pick, where we saw through the whole process of him trying to get that job, he invested a lot of time, he was diligent, he put a lot of effort into trying to make sure that he landed this opportunity, and it's sort of been a very natural fit ever since then. What's also helped us as well is like technology, really. Like, it's the fact that I still can't believe I'm seeing you for the first time in person, but it was very seamless. You came open arms, we gave each other a big hug, and after 2 years, it's just it's so easy to be like we're a part of the same team in business, while we've got to utilize Microsoft Teams and Zoom to effectively cultivate those types of relationships.
We know each other so well, but it's first time meeting in person.
Yeah, exactly.
Kabi, can you tell us a little bit about your day-to-day and how do you keep connected to the team in Australia? Obviously a little bit through technology and Zoom, but about your day-to-day would be great.
Yeah, so as Aki alluded to, we were primarily looking at the institutional and retail channels. Within the institutional channels, the family offices, endowments, pension funds, etc. That's much of a longer term play. We think that the strategies that we offer align really well with those types of clients. So that's certainly something we're working on, whether it's through CI's institutional group or through our own avenues of relationships. But those are sort of more longer term projects, as I mentioned. But the retail channel is where really our bread and butter. We sort of like to think of it as you have your end retail clients who are supported by their advisors, who are supported by the CI wholesalers, who are effectively then supported by us from a Munro perspective. So what that looks like is comparative analytics, talking through and positioning our strategy versus competitive strategies, or providing market insight on what we look at versus what some of our competitors might be looking at. Also, we like to think of ourselves as the mouthpiece for the investment team. So being able to work with them so closely allows us to give little updates on stocks that we're looking at, how we're viewing certain market events, and just different general hedging strategies, fund positioning, et cetera, et cetera. So just trying to be mindful of the time difference between Toronto and Melbourne, and being able to provide our clients with timely insights during the Canadian business hours. So that's pretty much what the day-to-day looks like as far as a sort of 8 to 5 or 9 to 5. But after hours is when we sort of get to connect with our colleagues, such as yourself and the investment team. The guys are very good about being able to be online and be present through all hours of our evening, so that we can get what we need for various inquiries and for just to keep us up to date on what they're thinking and how they're viewing things. So the hours are a little bit longer in that regard, but honestly, it's been great to be able to have that relationship, and to be able to overcome that time zone difference.
And what has been a highlight for both of you during your time at Munro?
From myself personally, it's been such a refreshing feeling to come over to a business where you're ultimately aligned to the clients and making sure that you do right by the investors. So it's been a very great experience in that regard, where everyone is so militant and focused on like genuinely the client experience, and that goes from every single person top down across the entire spectrum of our business. So that's been a very refreshing feeling to be a part of an organization that thinks and behaves in that manner. So that's been fantastic. As well, obviously, with the tremendous growth that we've seen in Canada, like today, the Canadian business is roughly 2/3 of the global operations for Munro, and that's been a very, that's effectively the hard work of 22 professionals over the past five or 6 years, building that sort of business and that framework out. And it's been great to say that Munro has been running from Australia, the largest liquid alternative in Canada. So that's been a very, very fun experience. And lastly, for myself on a personal level, a great sort of story for myself was getting inducted into the partnership and just keeping me further aligned with the business and the long-term orientation of what we're trying to do and build out for the future.
It was a very well-deserved partnership.
Thanks, Taylor. Appreciate it.
And Kabi, AK called you a rock star earlier. What would be your highlight?
It's a great question. I think it'd be tough to beat the Aussie Rules football game that we were just at, which was certainly an experience. But more seriously, I think the more general highlight for me has been the transition over to Munro. And what I mean by that is coming from a bigger organization, more structure, more tradition, in terms of everyone sort of knows their role, and it's hard to step outside of the lines a little bit, which has its place certainly in business. But I think coming over to Munro, it was fantastic to see how flat and open the culture is. Yes, there's roles and everybody has their titles, but people are more than welcome to try new things and wear multiple hats and try to learn new skill sets, which I think is unique. And outside of that, just there's so much opportunity to grow. As AK mentioned, the partnership, which helps you keep aligned to everyone internally as well as your clients. So just that culture and sort of changing into a bit of a smaller team and like I said, a flatter structure has been fantastic for me. Yeah.
And so, forward looking, what do you hope the Canadian team will achieve in the next 5 years?
if we look forward for the business, I think this sort of ties into what everyone here in head office in Melbourne sort of want to achieve is we want to be your global growth equity manager. So in my mind, I would love for Munro in Canada to be synonymous with structural growth investors. So if an investor or if a client is thinking about who's going to be that structural growth investor, thinking about earnings growth driving stock prices and wanting to gain exposure to that, they're going to think about Munro Partners. And I'd love for that to sort of become the way things are in Canada. I'd love to also see a sort of a diversification in our client base, find new opportunities and new client segments where we can grow and continue to gain trust from investors over the years. So that would be sort of a big longer term orientation. I think the focus as well is to stay relatively lean, but hopefully over the journey, we get to continue to working on our distribution arrangements with CI, but we'll see some new faces joining us in Canada to hopefully come back to our retreat on an annual basis here in Melbourne. So that would be ultimately great. And on a personal level, I'd love to continue to watch and sort of help be part of Kabi's journey of developing into that rockstar client-facing professional. So that's definitely a fun little thing that I get to be a part of as well.
And what do you see for the next 5 years?
I think AK covered a lot of good things there. I would have to echo what he said in terms of making Munro a household name. I've worked with quite a bit of fund managers back in my previous role and currently do a lot of homework on obviously some of the bigger fund managers here in Canada. And I still, I'm convinced that what we bring to the table is a little bit different, alluding to what AK was talking about a little bit earlier regarding how we see the universe and structural growth and S-curves. I think these things align really well with clients who are sort of investing for the future. And I think that I can't remember a single person who we've explained this strategy to, who we've done a pitch for, that wasn't at least intrigued. And so I think getting that message across the board, having it spread far and wide would be really where I want this business to be. And I want to hear, Munro being up there with sort of the household global growth managers in Canada.
Thank you so much for your time today, guys. I'm thrilled that we're able to do this video in person.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Taylor. Glad
Thank
to be
you.
here. Appreciate it.